Okay, continuing our review, page 2, looks like we're graphing some parabolas, okay? When you look at this is a function I'm being asked to graph. When you look at this, several things should happen. First of all, you should recognize the math voices in your head telling you this is in vertex form, okay? So there's certain things you know about vertex form. First of all, you can tell the vertex. So the vertex form is y equal a x minus h squared plus k. That vertex is hk. So I can look at this immediately and know the vertex of this parabola is at 3, 4. So before I make any more mistakes, that is the vertex, okay? Do I know if it opens upward or downward? I look at this parabola, there's a negative 1/2 in front of it. That means this thing opens down, okay? So now immediately I know the shape of this parabola is going to look like this, okay? Axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is just going to be the line that goes right through here, that goes through the vertex, and that is the line x equals 3. So you know that corresponds to the x-coordinate of the vertex. The y-intercept. The y-intercept is what you get when x equals 0. Okay, so if x is equal to 0, then y is equal to negative 1/2, and I get what? 0 minus 3 squared plus 4. Okay, so that is going to be 0 minus 3, so that's 3, that's square that, I get 9, so this is negative 9/2 plus 4. That is negative 9/2 plus 8/2, which is 4, so this is negative 1/2. So that tells me that that is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is at 0, negative 1/2. So at 0, negative 1/2, that's where I'm going to cross the y-axis, okay? I know from symmetry that I'm going to have a matching point, so that means if I go to get to this point from the vertex, I went to the left 3, so if I go to the right 3, I'm going to have a corresponding point right there, okay? Now for accuracy, I probably want to pick another point. If that's 3, what happens at 4? So let's just do that when x is equal to 4. So 4 minus 3. I'm gonna actually what I'm gonna do, just because I got that fraction, I like to not work with fractions. I'm gonna pick a 5. So if I pick a 5, 5 minus 3, when I plug that in, that's 2. 2 squared is 4. So 4 divided by negative 1/2, that's a negative 2. So negative 2 plus 4 is 2. So the point 5, 2 is on my graph, which is right here, and that means there's a corresponding point right there. So I have enough to graph this particular parabola right now. Okay, there we go. The domain of this function is negative infinity to infinity, and the range is negative infinity up to the value of 4, including 4. Okay, so this was a parabola that presented itself in vertex form. I was asked information and asked to graph it. Let's look at the next question. The next question is not an equality or an equation, it is an inequality. So the first thing I look when I see this one, I look at that and I know that whatever I do, I need a dotted. So continuing, we were cut off by the announcements here. So continuing our graph here, let's look and see what we get on graphing this guy. So it's the same equation, but it's, excuse me, same parabola, but it's an inequality. So I know I'm going to have to draw it with a dotted line. Okay, so it's the same thing I saw up there a moment ago at 3, 4. That's the vertex, and I knew that the y-intercept was at negative 1/2. So 1, 2, 3, so at negative 1/2 there, and we said 5, 2 was on the graph. So we get this point right here. So dotted line. So I'm graphing this same parabola with a dotted line, and then same thing here. Okay. So now I just need to figure out, where do I shade? Do I shade above the parabola or inside below the parabola? what I want to do is pick a test point. Usually 0, 0 is the best one to do. Now, keep in mind, if you drew this parabola, so here's 0, 0, that's outside the parabola. Now, if you did a bad job of graphing this, so if your graph looks like this, and you think that 0, 0 is in there, you're going to get the wrong answer. So I know that 0, 0 is outside that parabola because that y-intercept was 0, negative 1/2. So there was no way for it to go through the origin and that point. So I know that the origin is above that parabola. So let's just test the point. So I'm going to test 0, 0. So I'm going to plug the 0 in for y and x. So I would have 0. I'm asking myself, is 0 less than negative 1/2? 0 minus 3 squared plus 4. So 0 less than minus 1/2, and then this is 9 plus 4, and so that is 0 less than negative 9/2 plus 4. I'm going to write that as 8/2. So is 0 less than negative 1/2? That is a false statement. 0 is greater than negative 1/2. So it tells me that 0, 0 is not part of the solution. So 0, 0 is not part of the solution. So the solution has to be this area because everything outside of that would include 0, 0. So again, if you know how to graph the parabola, graphing the inequality, just a couple of things. Check and see if it's a dotted line or solid line right before you graph it, and then you have to pick a test point. 0, 0 is usually the best point to pick, unless you know your graph went through 0, 0. In that case, you would have to pick another point. But you pick another point, and you see if it makes your inequality true. If it makes it true, that point is part of the solution, and then you'll find that everything else on that side. So for example, if I found that this point was part of the solution, everything would be part of the solution. Okay, so but 0, 0 is usually the best point to pick as long as it's not on the parabola. If it is, then you pick a different point to test. Okay, that's the end of page 2 of our review.